And to those of you who are here, thank you and welcome. I am just going to do 30 minutes about your housing situation and wherever you are in the. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in here. So I want to set the tone for how we're going to approach the next 30 minutes. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just working with homeowners, and the ones who are making the best decisions aren't necessarily the ones who have timed the market perfectly. They're the ones who got clear on what is actually needed. So today is about that clarity. So if you leave with one useful question you hadn't thought to ask yourself, this was hopefully worth your 30 minutes. So this is for homeowners who feel stuck or unsure what makes sense for next. So you don't need to decide today. I'm just hoping to give you a little bit of clarity. I'm going to give you a simple framework that hopefully you can reuse and come back to if needed. What we're going to cover today, it's like I said, not to tell you what you should do with your home. It's to give you a way to think through the decisions so it actually makes sense for your situation. I know that you're busy. I'm busy too. Short and focused is my goal today. So we have 5 common paths, which my slide notes, of course, disappeared. But the common paths are to stay and improve, to sell and to buy, to sell and then rent yourself, keep it as a rental for yourself, and then pull out equity and invest it elsewhere. Every one of these paths is working for somebody, and I know that you're not in Southern California, Monica, but your market's pretty similar in terms of the expense that it costs and how high rental volumes and rents are. So this one, why this decision feels so hard, it's really hard for people to determine what to do next. And I want you to sit with it because most people think they're stuck because of how the market's going and rates are too high, inventory is too low, and maybe it's like not the right time. Those things are very real, but in my experience, the market is actually rarely the reason that people don't move forward. It's usually that they're getting conflicting advice from a few different people, and they're trying to solve a 5-year problem in one conversation, or the decision touches both on their finances and their identity. And that's a lot to hold at once. And I see this especially with long-term homeowners in Orange County specifically, who they've got a lot of equity, but they feel frozen. So the numbers might make sense to move, but it doesn't feel simple. And that's not necessarily a market problem, that's a clarity problem. And that's why we're here today. The decision might also feel overwhelming, not because it's impossible, but because most people are trying to answer 10 questions at the same time. This framework that I'm setting up today is going to hopefully help break that down for you. These are the 5 questions that I think are the whole framework. Everything else in this session is kind of built around them. And I want to give a quick overview before we go deep on each one, because when you see them together, something might click. So the first one is, what is your lifestyle friction? Is it about whether your home is actually working for your life right now, not the life you had when you bought it? Monthly comfort. This is not your debt to income ratio. It's whether your payment gives you breathing room or low level stress that you've just learned to live with. We've got an equity reality is the one that most people skip entirely. Your equity is not just a number on a Zillow estimate. This can be a tool. And right now, especially in Orange County, a lot of homeowners are sitting on a significant one without a clear sense of what it could actually do. Your timeline honesty is where a lot of decisions fall apart. A 2-year plan and a 10-year plan require completely different moves. Most people are making long-term decisions based on short-term feelings. And very important to me, your energy and your capacity. It sounds like a soft thing, but it's really not. Do you actually want a reno project right now? Do you want to be a landlord, or do you want your life to feel simpler? That's not a personality question, it's a resource question. So we're going to go through each one, and by the end, hopefully you'll know exactly which questions apply to you. So your lifestyle friction, let's start here. This one gets ignored a lot. It's about how your home feels day to day. It's not the Instagram version, this is the real version. Ask yourself, does this layout still work for how you live right now? Are you constantly dealing with little stressors, storage, stairs, noise, maybe parking? I have noisy neighbors. Maybe there's maintenance issues. And are you saying things like, it's fine for now, but you've been saying that for a couple years now? So if your home does support your life, you don't really think about these kinds of things much. But if it's fighting you, you feel it constantly, and it's just in small, draining ways. This alone doesn't mean you should move, but it's usually a first signal that a change may eventually make sense. So, monthly comfort. This, I want to really drive in on that. This is not what a lender says you can afford. This is about what feels okay month after month, even when life gets lifey. So I'd love you to ask yourself, does my monthly payment give me breathing room? Do I have space to travel? Maybe am I able to put money aside to save? Am I enjoying my life? Am I going out to dinner when I feel like it? And does it create a low level stress that you're just living with? People with different incomes make totally different choices here, and anything can be right. The goal is not to max out. The goal is sustainability. Our equity reality. This is where a lot more people get stuck too, because equity is not just a number on paper. I want you to look at it as a tool. So the real question is, does your equity work for you right now? Is it just sitting there because it feels safer not to touch? For some people, leaving it alone might be the right move. For others, having some of that equity might reduce some stress. It can create flexibility for you, and it could support a different phase of life, like grandparents moving in, downsizing, etc. There's no universal answer here. We're just building awareness around our equity. Our timeline honesty. This question, I think, changes everything. A lot of regret comes from making a long-term decision with short-term thinking, vice versa. Ask yourself, are we talking about a short season? Or are we talking about a long one? Is this a hold tight moment or set ourselves up for something greater moment? A decision that makes sense for the next 18 months might not make sense for the next decade. Getting honest about your timeline actually will help take a lot of this pressure off. Finally, this one, like I said, is the most important to me because I feel like our energy should all be protected. And I feel like people really underrate this, but this is not about money, it's about energy. So like I said, asking yourself, do I want a project right now? Do I want to deal with tenants, repairs, big life-changing decisions? And could this possibly make my life feel simpler and give me some of that energy back? I don't think any of these are better than the others. They're just right for different reasons, different seasons. A lot of people regret choices, not because they were wrong, but because they didn't match their capacity at that time. So why people stay stuck, and I could talk about this slide all day, but I won't. The biggest one I see is you're trying to solve everything at one time. Someone will come to me and in that same one breath will say, I want to move, but I don't want to sell until rates drop, but I also don't want to miss out, but I'm not sure I even want to stay in California. That's 4 decisions tangled all up in one. And another thing that I see a lot of people doing is they're making long-term decisions based on short-term discomfort. The market is weird right now. It is. So that framework that I'm going to build with you today is specifically designed to untangle this just one question at a time. Most people are not necessarily stuck because the market is confusing. They're stuck because they're trying to answer a lot of questions at one time. So you might already be leaning on one of these paths, and even loosely perhaps, but maybe something resonated, maybe something made you a little uncomfortable in a useful way. And what I want to do now is get really practical for each path. I'm going to give you some concrete first steps, not a to-do list, just one thing that actually will help you move the needle. So this path is to stay and improve, if this makes sense for you. Sometimes homeowners think that the solution to frustration with their house is like a major reno, when the real problem is usually 1 or 2 daily pain points. So they jump from a $150,000 remodel when they only really needed to fix something for maybe under $500. So just think about what's creating everyday stress. And instead of jumping to a house reno that may not show you a return on your home, just kind of take a step back and see if you could do some minor changes to help with creating that or managing that everyday stress. This is a very common one. People think, okay, this is the path most people assume they want before they've actually run some numbers, is selling and buying. And I get it. You're ready for something new. You've been scrolling Zillow at 11 p.m. You're mentally already in a different house. But here's where I see people get into trouble. They start touring homes before they know what they'd net from their current house. And then they fall in love with something. And suddenly you're stuck making an emotional decision without it under you. Specifically, I think I lost you guys for a moment. So the number changes for this conversation about what's possible on the buy side, and it's knowing what you're going to net in the end. So sequence matters. Net proceeds first, lifestyle priorities second. And I mean, actually sitting down, writing out what the next home needs to do for you, for your life, not just square footage and a nice kitchen. After all that, then you tour. The other thing we're saying here in this market is being prepared, being a prepared buyer matters. Inventory is still very limited. And if you find the right house, you need to be ready to move. That preparation starts now, not when you see the listing. If that path feels like yours, the first call is not to a listing agent. It's to your lender to understand your position and someone who knows your market to run a realistic net sheet. So let's say you want to sell and rent. So you want to spend, I would like to spend an extra second here because this is the path people feel kind of weird about. There's this idea that renting after owning is somehow going backwards. And I'll push back on that. I've seen clients who sell and then rent for 12 to 18 months. And then they use that window to figure out exactly where they wanted to land next without the pressure of a contingent offer or a rushed decision. Renting strategically is not a setback. It's buying yourself time and optionality, which in this market can be genuinely valuable. The key word is strategic. You go in knowing your budget, your location priorities, and your timeline, and it's a pause without a plan. It's not a retreat. For many people, renting will create breathing room that makes the next decision a lot easier. Let's say you keep your home as a rental. This one sounds like a no-brainer on the surface. Rents are strong in California for the most part. We're talking about Orange County primarily. Monica's up in the Bay Area. But you already own the property. Why not keep it and let somebody else pay the mortgage? And for some people, it's genuinely the right move. But I want to be honest with what this path actually requires, because I've seen homeowners go into it with rose-colored glasses and then regret it within a year. And first, I want to address the obvious question right away. If you keep it, where do you go? People who are considering this path are either buying their next home or converting this one to a rental, and they're moving into a rental themselves temporarily while they hold the asset and then figure out their next move. Both are legitimate, but you need to know which scenario you're in before you commit. So because the financial picture, it can be completely different. So if you're buying your next home while converting this one to a rental, you're qualifying for a new mortgage while carrying an existing one. Your lender needs to be in that conversation very early. If you're moving into a rental yourself, the question becomes how long and at what cost? South Orange County rents are not cheap, so that buffer needs to be built into your plan. Now talking about the numbers, run them for real, not just your rent minus your mortgage. You have to pay your mortgage, your property taxes, your HOA if you have one, and then you need a vacancy buffer for the months it sits between tenants, minus the maintenance and repairs as well. South OC HOAs run from $300 to $600 a month, and that math looks very different on paper than it does in your head. So second thing I would like you to consider when you're keeping it as a rental is property management. If you self-manage, you are the landlord. That means you're the person that gets the call that the garbage disposal broke on a Sunday. Some people are completely fine with that. Others think they will be, and they're not. They don't enjoy getting the call. So I really would like you to be honest with yourself about which one you are before you commit. If you hire a property manager, you can expect to pay anywhere between 8 and 12% of the monthly rent directly to the property manager. That's going to eat into your cash flow, but it does buy back time and your sanity. Third, this is the one that nobody talks about, your mental bandwidth. And like I said, I like protecting your energy. So even with the property manager, you still own the asset, but you're making decisions, you're liable, you're tracking it. For some people in the right season of life, this is completely manageable. For others, it adds a layer of stress that isn't really worth the return. And the question is not whether you can do it, it's whether you want to do it right now. This is the path that I'm finding most homeowners don't necessarily know that is available to them. And it's one of my favorites to talk about because it really reframes your decision. Most people think that their only options are stay as is or sell. But there's this whole middle ground that doesn't require you to go anywhere. And that's when you have equity. In Orange County, most homeowners who have been in their home for more than 3 to 4 years, you have significant equity. That equity doesn't just have to sit there. It can work for you while you stay exactly where you are. Most common use cases I see, we're paying off high interest debt that might be creating monthly stress. You're funding a renovation that makes staying feel like the right long-term decision. You're creating a financial cushion that gives you breathing room that you don't currently have. But this is where it gets interesting for some of you, that equity could also be your entry point into a second property. I work with homeowners who use their equity to buy rental properties in lower cost markets. Think Arizona, Texas, the Carolinas, even Ohio is one of those great markets where the numbers and the cash flow in a way that's harder to achieve in California very specifically. So others are getting into commercial real estate, which is another option. And then other people are house hacking. They might be buying a multi-unit and then letting tenants cover the mortgage. So duplex, triplex, quadplex. The point is, the home you're sitting in right now could be the foundation of wealth building, and you would never even have to leave it. So we're going to break down those 3 main tools for accessing that equity on the next couple slides. A cash out refi, in case you don't know, a cash out refi is one of the most straightforward of the 3 options I'm going to present. You replace your existing mortgage with a new, larger one, and the difference between the 2 comes to you in cash. For example, your home's worth $1 million, you owe $400,000. You might be able to refi into a $600,000 mortgage and walk away with $200,000 in cash, $200,000. You still have 1 monthly payment, you still own the home, nothing about your living situation changes. However, the term of the loan, most people will do a cash out refi on another 30-year loan. So be aware that your timeline restarts. Honest conversation about when this might make sense. If you bought or refied when the rates were in the 3s, a cash out refi at today's rate means your monthly payments going up potentially double. So the question isn't just can you access the equity, it's whether the use of that cash justifies the higher payment long term. Where I see this work really well is someone who has a clear high value use for the funds, like maybe they're paying off a debt at 20% interest, funding a renovation that adds significant value to your home, or making an investment that generates returns above that new rate, whether that be crypto or the stock market. I'm not telling you to gamble away your money, but sometimes that can add value there. Where I do see it go sideways is when you pull out cash without a specific plan and end up with a higher payment and nothing to show for it. So I have a lender partner who I love working with. Her name's Mina. She works through these homeowners or scenarios with homeowners regularly, and the math is very situation specific. So if this is something you're considering, that's a conversation worth having before you assume it does or doesn't make sense for you. A HELOC, a home equity line of credit. This is different from a cash out refi. You're not touching your existing mortgage at all. Your current rate, your current payment, all that stays exactly as is. Instead, you're opening a separate line of credit secured by the equity that you hold in your home. It's like a credit card backed by your house as collateral. You get approved for a maximum amount and you only draw on what you need when you need it. So you'd only pay interest on what you've actually used, not the full line. This makes it really flexible if you're doing a renovation in phases maybe, or if you want a financial cushion, but don't necessarily need to use it right away. A HELOC gives you access without commitment, so you're not paying interest on money just sitting there just in case. The thing to understand about HELOCs too is that they are typically at a variable rate, so your payment can fluctuate with the market. For some people, that's fine. I mean, sometimes people are expecting the rates to drop again. I think our rates are going to stay in like high fives and sixes for a while, where I saw something about the jobs report today, but I won't get into that. But for those who need a payment that's predictable, this can feel really uncomfortable. And that's also worth knowing before you go into it. The other thing, this is important, a HELOC is a revolving credit. And that means as you pay it down, you can draw from it again. For ongoing projects or as a long-term financial tool, this flexibility can be really useful. For homeowners who bought before 2022 and have a low fixed rate that they don't want to give up, a HELOC might be the most attractive option because then you preserve your rate completely on your first mortgage. My friend Mina can run specific numbers for you for your situation if that's the direction that feels right. A home equity loan is the third option I'm going to talk about. And in some ways, it's like the simplest to understand. You're borrowing a fixed amount at a fixed rate with a fixed monthly payment. It's technically a second mortgage, which is completely separate from your existing loan, which again stays untouched. Where this differs from a HELOC is that you get everything up front, one lump sum deposited directly into your account, and then your payments start immediately. For some people, that predictability is what they want. This works really well for a specific one-time need where you know your number going in. Maybe a kitchen reno with a firm contractor's bid. Maybe you're paying off a specific debt. Maybe you're funding a down payment on an investment property. Situations where you need a defined amount and you want a defined payoff timeline, this is what it's good for. What it's not great for is an ongoing or uncertain expenses because you're paying interest on the full amount from day one, whether you've used it or not. So if you're not exactly sure what you need or you might need funds in phases, a HELOC might be the better fit for you. The way I like to think about it is cash out refi if you want to consolidate everything into one mortgage, HELOC if you want flexibility and you're preserving a good existing rate, home equity loan if you have a specific number, a specific purpose, and you want payment certainty. All of these might be the right tool depending on your situation. Again, the goal today isn't to decide which one, it's to know that they exist, and then accessing your equity doesn't automatically mean selling your home. So is accessing your equity the right move? These 4 questions are the filter, and I want to walk through them honestly because equity access gets oversimplified in both directions. Either your equity is just sitting there, use it, or never touch your home equity, it's too risky. The real answer depends entirely on your personal situation. If you want to stay long-term, you have a clear use of the funds, and the payment doesn't add stress to your life, it's worth exploring seriously. If any of those 3 are a no, just slow down. The worst version of this is pulling equity without a clear plan and ending up with a higher payment and nothing to show for it. My lender, Mina, and I talk about this a lot. It's not about whether you can access the equity. It's about whether it's the right tool for your specific goal. So using equity to buy your next property. This one tends to surprise people the most. There's an assumption that if you want to build wealth through real estate, you either have to sell what you have and trade up, or you have to have a separate pile of cash sitting around for a down payment. But a lot of Orange County homeowners are doing neither of those things. They're using the equity that they've already built to get into a second property without selling, without a separate savings account, without disrupting their current life at all. So here's what that might look like in practice. You access your equity through one of those tools we just talked about. You use those funds as a down payment on a rental property in a market where the numbers, you'll actually see some cash flow. Markets like I said, Phoenix, Tucson, Dallas, Charlotte, Columbus. These are generally college towns, places where you can buy a single family home for around $350,000 and then rent it for enough to cover the mortgage and then some, and then hopefully give yourself some income as well. Orange County equity is super powerful in these markets, and South OC equity is powerful in those markets in a way that it's really tough to be here because our price point makes cash flow with local rentals really difficult. But that same equity transplanted into a lower cost market suddenly works. Another option some homeowners are exploring is house hacking, buying a duplex or a small multi-unit, living in one of those units, and then letting the tenants in the other units cover the mortgage. It's one of the most effective wealth building strategies in real estate, and it's been around forever. And then the same process applies to that one. Once you build up enough equity in there, you use that equity on that home to then invest in the next property. The big idea I want you to walk away from this slide is that the home you're in right now is not just a place to live. For a lot of you, it's already your most significant financial asset. The question is whether it's working as hard as it could be. And for many of you, it's not yet. So we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time, and I want to bring it back to something simple. Every path we talked about is working for somebody in Orange County right now. Staying and improving, selling and buying, renting for flexibility, converting to a rental, accessing equity to reduce or stress, or maybe to build wealth. These are not hypotheticals. These are decisions real people are making in this market right now. Here's what I've learned from working with homeowners through all these scenarios. The right next step is almost never the biggest possible move. It's just usually the next honest question. So if staying feels right, but something's off, the next step is identifying what's actually driving that friction. If moving feels right, but the timing feels wrong, the next step is running the numbers so you know exactly what you're working with. If you're intrigued by the rental or equity options, but it all feels really complicated, the next step is a single conversation with the right people to see if the math even makes sense for your situation. You don't have to have it figured out today. What I hope to leave you with is a clearer sense of which path is closest to where you are and what one question could answer this week that might help you move forward. Just one question, one next step, not the whole decision. So, like I said, today is not about deciding whether you stay, move, or rent your home out tonight. The goal was to give you a way to step back and think about your situation more clearly. If one of the 4 paths stood out to you, maybe the next step is just to pressure test it by using those 5 questions we talked about. Lifestyle friction, monthly comfort, equity, your timeline, the energy that you might have for the process. Often when we think through these questions, honestly, then the right answer becomes a lot more clear. So, and I'll keep this part short because I said it and I meant it. Some of you are going to leave today and know exactly what your next step is and you'll handle it. That's perfect. Others are going to have a clearer picture, but want someone to actually run the numbers with you. What would you net? What could you afford? What does that timing look like in your specific neighborhood? And that's what this strategy calls for. It's not a sales pitch. It's genuinely just a conversation where we map out your situation. There's no pressure to decide anything. And if that sounds useful, I'm going to go ahead and link or create a link in the chat, and then you can book an appointment with me. And if you have questions right now, let's do it. So some people leave like this, something like this, and they already know what makes sense for them. Other people want to talk through the numbers and their timeline and what their different paths might actually look like. So if you're in that second group, I'm always happy to do that. I offer strategy calls and we can walk through your situation together, even if the outcome is simply confirming that staying put for right now is the right move. Either way, I'm so glad that you took the time to think about this because these are big questions and it's a lot easier if we break it down. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. I did put a couple just questions in there that some people might have, and I'm happy to answer those as well. But let's see if we have any questions in the chat. You're welcome, Alyssa. Thank you so much for joining. You have questions on 1031. 1031 exchanges are a very unique scenario, and that could actually have its own hour-long webinar. But I like that question. Just to clarify really quickly, a 1031 is an investment property. And yes, it would only be for a rental. A 1031 exchange also has like very tight timelines and things like that. But that is, if you sell a 1031 property or you want to turn your personal home into a 1031, you only have so much time to buy your next property. There's a lot of details on that one. So we'll talk offline on that one. Thank you. So just one of my questions was, how do I know if my equity is enough to make a move? And a lot of people are underestimating what they're sitting on, and a quick CMA, which is a comparable market analysis, gives you a realistic sales price. You're going to subtract your mortgage payoff, the closing costs, which includes the commission, as well as other closing costs like escrow fees and title fees, and then even property taxes, because you will do a proration on property taxes when you sell. And then what's left is your working capital. So South OC, very specifically, even homeowners who bought 5 or 6 years ago are really surprised by how much equity they're actually holding. So the better question isn't whether it's enough, it's really, is it enough for what? And that's what that strategy calls for. So what if I want to sell, but my spouse isn't ready? That's actually one of the more common dynamics I see, and it's rarely actually about the house. It's usually one person is carrying more of the daily friction. Perhaps the commute, the maintenance, the layout doesn't work for them anymore. And the other person isn't feeling it yet. So most useful thing you can do is run the numbers together without any commitment to act. And then when both people can see clearly what's possible, the conversation tends to shift. It stops being about wanting to leave and starts being about what you're moving toward. And then my favorite, is now actually a bad time to buy? And this depends entirely on your timeline. If you're buying for 2 years, maybe. If you're buying for 7 to 10, historically, there's never been a bad time to buy in Orange County. And the people who waited for rates to drop in 2023 watched prices climb while they waited. So people who waited for prices got priced out, or prices to drop, they got priced out. Timing the market is a losing game. Timing your life is really where it matters. So, of course, Monica, I'm so happy that you joined. She wishes I was a realtor in SF. Too foggy up there. I like my sunshine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this recording. And if you guys do have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. And I'm so grateful that you were all here today. Thank you.